The status of power supply in Uganda, I can say that the generation segment has been working very well, except for a few occasional disturbances, like recently when we had national power blackouts, 2 power blackouts in the recent few months. First, when a vegetation invaded the Nalu Valley power station, and recently when there was another failure at Nalu Valley. Other than that, the power generation has really been working very well in the greater part of the country. I want to speak now about the transmission segment. I want to say that the status of supply in respect to transmission is still work in progress. A greater part of the country is not covered by the transmission grid, and that poses challenges with evacuation of power. It poses challenges with reliability of power. But the transmission company is working very diligently to make sure that the grid is expanded, the grid is strengthened, so that there is a reliable voltage where it is needed. When I got to the distribution segment, I want to say that yes, we are not there where we want to be, but I want to say that on the greater part, we are doing very well. Electricity is available. There are outages that are happening in places. You hear there's an outage here, there's an outage here, there's an outage there. Sometimes these outages are caused by the system itself. So on a general, I can say that power supply reliability, we are not yet where we want to be, but we are working towards there. There are outages, some of them caused by vandalism, others by system failures, others by negligence. But we are working to ensure that the network is strengthened, is taken care of, and it's available when people need it. Yeah, blackouts are caused by very many causes. The first blackout I think we got was occasioned by a fault that originated in Kenya. You know, our system is interconnected at Tororo with the Kenyan system, and all electricity grids, from what the engineers teach us, all grids are interconnected. One country interconnects with the other for several purposes of trading, purposes of supporting each other, and purposes of just stabilizing a network. Okay, so the first challenge we got when we got a first blackout, there was a fault that originated in the Kenyan system, and it moved through what the engineers call a transient fault. It transited through from Kenya into the Ugandan system, and because the Kenyan systems were stronger than ours, it sent us crumbling. But even Kenya had crumbled it itself, so we're in an outage here as they were restoring their own system. That was the first one. The second fault we got was when a vegetation carried by the rising waters of Lake Victoria found its way through the gates at Nalu Valley. And because of that, it affected units of generation. And when the units went off, they sent the whole system down. The interesting thing is about electricity that we are learning from the engineers is that it is so connected that a knock-on effect is always very likely. When, say, one part goes out, it has got a knock-on effect on the other, because, say, for example, if a unit or two go out, they carry the load they were carrying and send it onto the remaining units. And if they are not steady, they all find themselves collapsing. And so when you have one plant collapsing on the same line, the rest might also collapse and you have to start again. So the vegetation affected us. Then we had another blackout which happened quite recently. It originated on what the engineers call a bus bar fault and things like that. I don't want to go into that detail, but it originated in the switchyard of Nalu Valley, and it sent the whole system collapsing, and so the grid had to be restarted. These are things that happen once in a while or again and again, and so the regulator is actually addressing himself to why do we have repeated national blackouts and outages? Other than malicious work where vandals have vandalized the transmission tower and it comes down, why do we have these system-generated faults that are happening again and again? Something that the regulator is addressing himself. We are very, very concerned as Electricity Regulatory Authority about total blackouts, and we are working out a mechanism to make sure that the frequency is really diminished, or they do not happen at all. However, because of the act of God, natural factors, sometimes it's difficult to eliminate them. But the regulator is working with the responsible operators, generation and transmission, to make sure that these blackouts don't happen, because they cause the business distortion. When a blackout happens and there is a manufacturing company where there's production on the line, all that becomes waste. They pose a security risk for the country. They cause problems in hospitals where people are on treatment, someone is on oxygen, and then there is a sudden blackout. So the regulator is very concerned about this. There are a number of initiatives that I would like to allude to. The first one is by carefully allowing investments where there is need for investments. Investments that stabilize the network, that is very important. The other thing that the regulator is doing is by working with electricity consumers themselves to make sure that consumers become ambassadors for power supply stability. And in this, we are calling on electricity consumers. Should you have an outage in your area, constant outages, power going off and on, power being unreliable, power being insufficient in terms of voltage, reach us as the Electricity Regulatory Authority, and we will be able to use the information you give us to ensure that licensees or distribution companies are able to account for their time and their service. So electricity consumers are a very big mechanism for us to make sure that we know power is available and steady everywhere where it is supplied. The other one that we are doing is recently we introduced a penalty mechanism, which we call the S factor. A penalty mechanism has been introduced by the regulator, and it's taking effect in January 2021. What is the penalty mechanism going to be? It is going to be a mechanism where reliability indicators are set for distribution companies, all of them. If they go below those reliability indicators, or if they perform less than that, they are going to lose money. And of course, you know that there is no businessman who wants to lose money. They will do everything they can to make sure that they gain them. The first thing they should expect is reliable electricity, because distribution companies will not allow to lose money because of penalties. So they should expect reliable supply. They should expect available supply. They should expect adequate supply. Issues of voltages, outages on and off are going to be seriously diminished or eliminated. However, I want to inform consumers that you are very important allies of ERA in the implementation of this penalty mechanism. 2 or 3 things. The first one is that please protect the installations where you live. If you live near an electricity installation, do not be part of a crowd that says, let's burn them, let's vandalize, let's burn, let's vandalize. Every time you do that, you're actually affecting yourself. You are causing outages by vandalizing a system. You're creating costs in the tariff. Because when you vandalize a transformer or when you burn it, a new one has to be bought. How is a new one bought? By money being allowed through the price you pay for unit of electricity. So it is the role of every consumer or every Ugandan to protect electricity installations where you are. When you see someone vandalizing or burning or destroying an electricity equipment, please report to the nearest police station, report the distribution company, even report to the regulator, report to ERA. We will as well be able to pick it up and see how we can mitigate that. The next thing that consumers can do to participate in reliable supply of electricity is please pay your bills. Do not steal electricity. Those of you who steal electricity are partly the reason why the price of electricity is where it is. People keep saying that the price of electricity is high, but it's probably high because the losses from what is stolen have to be factored into the tariff to make sure that the revenue required for the sector is realized. So do not steal electricity. Pay your bills. Okay? Pay your bills. Next is report when you see problems. Report poor supply of electricity. There is just so much information a consumer can obtain or get from the regulator. Visit our website at www.era.or.ug. If you can do that, you have a whole menu. If you, for example, go under the menu called Media, there is a lot of information. There is a menu called Consumer Affairs. There is a lot of information for electricity consumers. There is even an answer to the questions you have every day. There are even question and answers. There are videos, there are audios there. Then the other thing I want to encourage you is please follow us on Facebook. We post a lot of updates and new information on our Facebook page on what is happening in the sector. Even when we're inviting people for public hearings, we share on Facebook. We post this information on our Twitter handle. Even videos like this one are posted on our YouTube channel. So subscribe, follow us, okay? Be part of what is going on in the supply industry by following the information channels that we put out there. Give us feedback, write us an email. If you cannot send a text, you can send us a text on WhatsApp, or you can write us an email at info@era.or.ug, and we'll be happy to hear from you, and we'll be happy to write back to you.